Shabbat shalom, everybody. Today was a. I'm glad that actually the parasha that I get to speak to today is about Chayei Sarah, which is about women, and I'm only addressing the part of the woman, and not even touching upon the part of man, which is who is to be our protector. Um, he was to have dominion over all the world, so his responsibility is huge. But this is for us as women today. And I've entitled it, What is Our Value as Women? It's not often that women are highlighted in the Torah, unless they've had a very unique role, such as Sarah. So much so that our sages used her name in the title of this parasha, which is Chayei Sarah. And Chayei, as Mauricio pointed out in his message last year, he said it's a plural, it's not singular. So it's not talking about reincarnation, many lives. It's speaking about the many stages that she as a woman went through in this life. And I can certainly relate to that because I've been through so many in my own life. And that's what's so exciting to me about this story. And the thing that I love about it is that you never know what's waiting for you around the corner. And so no matter what goes on in our lives, never give up hope because things can change like that. Now, I thought, what was Sarah thinking when Abram told her that they were leaving their home? They were leaving their families, everything, because he heard a voice from heaven. She hadn't heard it. But the fact was that she left without a word of complaint. And this implies that she trusted him. We never hear complaints coming from Sarah, really. Not then, not even when Abraham told her to pretend that she was his sister to save his life, not only once, but twice. How often do our husbands or our fathers make decisions that cause us to roll our eyes in our head? But Sarai never lost respect for Abram. It is the woman who gives the man his place of respect in the home. And that's an issue of the heart. And Sarah was loyal. We don't hear about her crying out to Abram about not being able to have a child during all those years of marriage, unlike Rachel, who cried and complained to Jacob. Sarai was a practical, down-to-earth woman who handled the details of running her home. Now, Abram was wealthy, so they had property and servants to manage. She was like the woman in Proverbs 31. She was decisive, but she could be quite pushy. I can relate to that. Her practical nature made her laugh when the angel predicted that she would have a baby the following year. Remember, she was 89 years old. I'd laugh too if someone told me I'd have a baby next year. She denied having doubted the angel's words. But how many of us have been caught in a lie or embarrassed when confronted with some truth about ourselves? It's our human nature to protect our fragile egos. It was customary in those days for women to have many wives. Yet Abram had only Sarai, showing us how special she was to him. It was only when she insisted did he agree to take her beautiful servant Hagar so that he could have an heir. It was a shame on the head of any woman who could not bear children, unlike today, where so many women choose not to have children or choose to abort them. That's why it was so difficult for Abraham when Sarah ordered him to get rid of Hagar and Ishmael, but God told him to listen to Sarah. We often see God extending his loving hand of mercy to cover over our mistakes. As strong and as loyal as Sarah was, she was just a human being. We all make mistakes. Sarah accepted everything that was handed to her during their long life together. But I think that the final test, the Akedah, known as the binding of Isaac, was just too much for her. The Torah does not say whether she knew that Abraham had heard God tell her to tell him to take his only son, her only son, Isaac, to offer him as an olah, a burnt offering. Remember, they were living in a society where children were being offered as sacrifices to their gods. And she did see Abram and Isaac leaving with the wood for an offering. We know that Abraham trusted God to the end. But did Sarah? Rashi wrote that when Sarah heard the news, her soul flew from her. I guess we all have our limits. After this, Abram and his servants went to Beersheba, where he lived. But Sarah was in Kiryat Arba, or Hebron, when she died, and where Abraham came to mourn for her. It seems to me from the text that they were not together at the end, but there are various opinions about this among our rabbis. He did, however, buy her the best burial place in Hebron, the cave of Machpelah, and didn't quibble over the high cost. Only after she was gone did Abraham marry again. He obviously loved her and held her in very high esteem. He loved her deeply. Now we come to the next generation of the strong matriarchs of Israel. Rebecca, or Rivka, enters the scene after the Akedah, when Abraham was looking for a wife for Isaac. Her name Rivka means a yoke used to join two animals of the same species together to fulfill a purpose. This is according to the Hebrew dictionary by Evan Shoshan. Interesting, since she gave birth to twins, Jacob and Esau. Although Rivka came from a background where deceit was the norm, she was the bright light in this family, chosen by God to continue the lineage of Israel. Later, we would get to know the character of her brother Lavan. I love the story at the well where Eliezer prays a very specific prayer to find the right wife for Isaac. It gives me such hope about how God always intervenes directly in our lives. We see that Rivka had the heart of a servant. She hurried to water the candles. She hurried to draw water for all the camels of Eliezer. She was decisive when asked if she would go with Eliezer. She immediately responded without hesitation, "I will go." She had qualities very much like Sarah and would be the perfect one to fill the void in Isaac's life. So what does all this mean for us today as women? Sometimes the mundane tasks of raising a family can bring us down, especially in a society that doesn't honor the role of being wife and mother. We question, what has God called us to do? Most of the women in the Torah, as well in later eras, rarely saw the fruit of their labor. Sarai lived 90 years before she gave birth to Isaac, who would be the second father of Israel. She might not have understood that she was chosen to be the mother whose descendants would be handed the 10 Commandments so that we could be a light to all the nations. Each of us are chosen, yet our true purpose may not be revealed until after we're gone. God knew the family in which he was placing us. He knew the family who would be the soil in which we would grow to fulfill the calling of our lives. Sometimes we may wonder how we ended up being in our family, such a family. We may feel like the black sheep, or we've inherited problems or illnesses that are so hard to cope with. Yet even in this, God has a purpose. We are living in times when the roles of men and women are reversed. In fact, roles are being invalidated entirely, and all that the Torah stands for is being stomped upon by society. We are living in times when women want to replace men as the head of the home and of society as a whole. I love one of the teachings of our Rabbi, of Rabbi, that women are the last and highest of God's creation. That position holds tremendous responsibility. The women of the Bible were strong, and so are we. In fact, it was knowing our roles and our purpose that gave us that strength, and still do today. There's a great expression in Judaism: men are the head, but women are the neck. We are the backbones of our homes and of our communities. We can make or break our men, but remember, when we break them, we are breaking ourselves. Being the strength behind our men, they thrive with our support. It's not always an easy thing to do because we may at times doubt their decisions or their capabilities, but it is important for us to remember that men have a more practical side to their nature that we often lacked. The world doesn't often understand the order that God set down for humanity, unlike those of us who follow the Torah. He gave us the pattern on how to live. We have been given eyes to see and ears to hear. It has never been easy to be a woman, no matter what era we have lived in. However, when Sarai's name was changed to Sarah, the letter He was added. It means that the Borei Olam entered her life and opened her eyes to the truth of his existence. Although women were placed under two curses after Eve's disobedience, when our eyes are opened, the letter He is added to our names. We've been given so many gifts as women, an intuitive sense, a nature that wants to nurture, the desire to draw closer to our Creator. It doesn't mean that life becomes easier. Rather, we know that we have a powerful God on our side who helps us in all things. Like the male heroes of the Bible, the women were not perfect, but they are all examples from whom we can learn many great lessons. Most mothers do not live long enough to see the roles that their children will play in the world. No matter how difficult the task may be of preparing this next generation, let us always remember that God chose us for a reason, that He hears our prayers, that He sees our hearts, that He has called us by our name, and He has placed His name within us, and He alone knows the future. So it is our responsibility, together with our husbands, with the men in our community, as we are His helpmate, to prepare this next generation. Now, even those who never had children, our prophet Isaiah says in chapter 54, "Sing, O barren one, you who did not bear children, break forth into song and cry aloud, you who did not go into labor, for more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, says the Lord." Our responsibility as women is great. Our intuitive nature is a gift. Let's use them wisely. Shabbat Shalom.